You ready to help people travel with their service dog? Not lick me. Okay, well he's not ready, but I'm ready.
I'm gonna try and keep this short, but it might be a bit long because there are some steps. So feel free to click up the speed if you need to. So number one, figure out what documents you need. You're gonna need to search the airline and the location specifically. So every airline requires slightly different forms. So what I do is I will search Air Canada, service dog. Go to that page, it'll list all the forms that you need. Make sure you have them, make sure they're filled out. Now for the country that you're going to, you will need to go to their actual government website and then see what they need for importing a dog. Service dogs are technically an imported animal, so there is some crossover there. Some have a specific service dog page, but usually it's listed on the importing a dog page, and that will tell you what they need to do. So usually it's rabies, usually a microchip, usually neutered as well or spayed, and then proof of training to some extent, but that varies by country as to what that means. Then sometimes you need a health certificate, sometimes a pet passport. Usually that's more based on where you're from, so in the EU, they'll have a pet passport, which is a health certificate. In Canada, we don't have that, and that kind of sucks. Also, I think those should be cuter, and they need to have photos of the dogs and look like a real passport. They're kind of not that cute, and they should be cuter. Then beyond that, when you book the flight, this is important. I try and book at least a week in advance. I'm a very last minute person. I know most people book months in advance. I'm incapable of that. 2 weeks is my sweet spot. You're gonna then want to check on that service dog section of that airline how you submit the information. Typically they want this emailed. They usually also have a paper or a form, some paperwork you need to fill out that then registers it with the airline. So a DOT form is common in the US. In Canada, I don't know what it's called. It's just a form that they seem to link, and it doesn't seem to have a memorable name, or at least I've never remembered it, and I filled it out 20 times now. So that's something you're gonna need to do. You then typically email it to them. Now some airlines have a different system. So we recently flew Alaska, and we were able to you go to this other website, you upload all the info, they verify it, and then you just link their verification to Alaska, which was so much easier. I really like that. But you gotta send that in. Make sure you get a confirmation, and then I recommend printing out the confirmation or at least saving it somewhere where you will have it when you get to the check-in desk. I also recommend printing out all the documents that you needed to submit to them. That way you have a physical copy. Personally, I take 2 copies of this just in case anyone needs to take it. Never had them need to take it, but just in case. I'd rather be safe than sorry. Then when you get to the airline, you're gonna need to go to the front desk to check in. That's super important. So unfortunately, they cannot be okay, cool, a pet's coming on. We can just guarantee that. They need to see the animal, make sure that he's he is kind of who he says he is. Now, you basically just tell them okay, he's a golden retriever, he kind of weighs this much. And then they kind of want to see that he's not an absolute lunatic, attacking people. Beyond that, they're mostly just checking kind of rough specs. They've never weighed my dog, they've never tape measured him or something. They tend to just want to double check that he's there, maybe double check your paperwork. 85% of times they will look at it. It is annoying because it means you have to get there a bit earlier to go through the check-in process. I've only had one airline that put me in priority, even though technically they're kind of supposed to, but just plan ahead for that. Then for security, you will go through. I'm happy to make another video about that. If you have questions, please let me know. I have a lot of experience with different securities all over the world, some good, some bad. Then when you get to the airline as well, when you're going through with him, I always recommend when you get to the desk on the other side, you get to your gate. Well, okay, first of all, go to the pet relief area. Even if they don't have to pee, it's just a good way to get them acclimatized to it for if you ever do a longer flight where they might need to go. I find that quite helpful. They do tend to be in dumb areas, so it is a bit of a trek. If you have mobile issues, don't stress, don't do it. Then go to your gate. Always talk to the people at the front desk. I think it's just a good practice, and be hey, I have a service dog. Can you let me know the boarding practices? Now, I know the boarding practices, but this is a way for them to realize you have the service dog, and they tend to try and do a bit more to help you out. Not everyone, and they can't always do stuff, but I've often been able to get a free seat on flights where he wasn't entitled to a free seat. I've also often been able to have them move my seat if there was an extra a better spot that had more leg room that they knew of. Things like that were really, really helpful. Then always pre-board. It is great that you get to go when they say anyone with kids needing more time, go then, because number one, you'll always get a spot for your bag. Number two, you have time to settle your dog while the plane is still empty, and you're not having to worry about people behind you or something. So that is super, super easy. I would also say kind of before this, If you want to travel carry-on only, that's okay, but it can be a bit cumbersome while you're also like managing a dog and everything. Like use a hands-free leash if that's the case. Personally, I still struggle with it because like dog, backpack, carry-on, probably Starbucks, probably other stuff. So personally, I usually check a bag as well because he's huge, so he has a lot of food he has to eat, but that is up to you. Now a tip though is to have like a tote bag with his stuff in it. So if he needs certain things like on the ground with you, like so for my dog, he has a blanket he sleeps on because airport floors are disgusting. So are the planes in my opinion. He has a collapsible water dish so he can have some water to help his ears pop. I have my treat pouch for him, but it's usually like a fanny pack that I wear so that doesn't go in there. He wears a happy hoodie to help with the plane noise sound. It's like a Snood thing that goes over his head. He looks hilarious. It's really, really funny. And also kind of helps if you're like seatmate. Sometimes I had a seatmate that's like afraid of dogs and I'm like, help this poor person. But that seems to make them laugh at him a little bit more. So it's like, I had 2 people that were clearly not comfortable and unfortunately there was nowhere for them to move to. So we did our best. Then I also, in there I do his water bottle, and then if your dog needs a toy or a chew or something, especially for their first flight, a really like high incentive chew can be a great option to keep them distracted. So that's that. I mean, if it's a longer flight, I would bring pee pads. We haven't really needed them yet, so I've only brought them once, and then he didn't need them, so I kind of stopped because our flights are like max 6 hours at the moment, and he can hold it for 12, and like he doesn't have to because we go to the pet relief areas, so we've been pretty good. But that's something to consider. If you want any other tips, like what to do when you need to go to the bathroom or something, I'm happy to give information as best I can. I've flown my service dog, I think 26 times now. In the last 2 years, travel is my job, so we do it a lot. So always happy to answer questions. I will always say that like my experience is my experience. It is gonna be a bit different for everybody. And obviously every airline and country will have specific rules you should check. But yeah, that's the best I can do to help out, and I do think service dog travel should be more accessible to everybody, and I know it can be really scary and stressful to start with, and the number one tip I can give you is your dog is a dog, and they are sometimes not going to be comfortable on their first flight or on multiple flights. I try to desensitize Theo to that, and I can definitely give tips on that too, but ultimately like the way that they get used to flying is that they fly. So the first 1 or 2, they're not going to be the most comfy, and that's okay. Like if they bark once or twice, even if they bark throughout, honestly, if they're not actively like hurting anybody, first flight jitters happen. It's unfortunate, but like we've all heard a baby cry on a flight. If they are a bit shaky, if they're panting, some dogs just pant. Theo's a panter, like that's his thing. So that's okay too. Do not feel that they need to be 100% perfect. This is a high stress environment and you cannot train for flying until you fly, basically. So I hope this was helpful. I know it was a bit long. This is like my 8th time trying to record it and keep it down, but there's a lot of info here, and ultimately, yeah, travel should not be too scary. The biggest thing is going to be just finding the right forms, filling them out, and then making sure that you feel confident in this, and some of that just comes from doing it.